Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking my top 10 favorite Power Rangers figure lines. Now, as of this recording, next year we are going to be getting a new MMPR figure line from Playmates. As of the time I'm recording this, we have not seen what it looks like, but I thought it would be a good time to go over my favorite lines. And this generally encapsulates everything, not just like the main figure line. I might do maybe a ranking someday in the future, like ranking all of the main figure lines, you know what I mean, the first waves that release and stuff like that. But this was kind of any sort of figure line, Lightning Collection, Legacy, the main type of figures, power-up figures, all that type of stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. Just some real quick honorable mentions. I did want to shout out Hasbro's basic figures, mainly because they were way better than I thought. That was one of my few worries when we went into the Hasbro era toy-wise, was I had seen their basic figures for like Marvel and stuff, and they were usually pretty boring and strange looking. And these were surprisingly decent looking, you know, had decent proportions. They weren't overly muscly. You know, they fell off a little with some of them, but for the most part, they were better than I thought. Also, this is a bit of a weird one because it's not necessarily like an individual figure line, but I always really liked those bike figures that came with stuff like MMPR Zeo Turbo Space that were included like with the Zeo Jet Cycles or the Galaxy Gliders. They definitely don't look the most accurate, but they have this very retro feel, and I've always just been very fond of them. Oh, also one other honorable mention is the Wild Force basic figures. When you look at them, these are definitely some of the weirdest looking ones. They kind of look like the Goombas from the Mario movie with their tiny heads and muscly bodies, but I've always had a soft spot for these because for whatever reason, when I saw the first image of Wild Force in Fox Kids magazine, first of all, I thought it was going to be a sequel to Time Force because of the word force, because I was stupid back then. I'm still stupid now, but something about those suits just clicked with me. I was so excited. It was one of the ones that I hunted for the most when I was younger because I wanted to find the figures, and when I finally found them, I was so excited. So they're definitely some of the fugglier ones, but they always have a soft spot for me. So coming in at number 10 is the flip head figures. This kind of just encapsulates all of them, probably primarily the MMPR ones because I have a soft spot for them because my very first PR toy was an MMPR black flip head. But I always thought these were fun. These are other ones where you collect them and you're not getting them for the accuracy, more so just for the fun gimmick or if you like a retro feeling toy. Oddly enough, I think the MMPR ones look the best because they don't look the most accurate, but they also don't look like thumbs like a lot of the later ones. But I always just thought this was a fun figure idea to play off the gimmick of the morphing in the series and getting to have the option of having a civilian head. I always just thought this was a lot of fun for a line, and I have a soft spot for it personally. I'd love for them to bring it back at some point in the future. I know we did an update with Hasbro, but I feel like it's been so many years that we could come up with one that looked closer to accurate and was engineered in a more intelligent way. After that, another personal pick, just in terms of a soft spot for me, is the Lost Galaxy ones. These are definitely very classic, like musclehead figures, but they're one of my most like retro nostalgic ones because it was this time where, you know, that exciting hunt for the new MMPR or PR Toys period, and usually my local Targets or Walmarts would never get it first. I don't know if there's any sort of science behind that or whatever, you know what I mean? Like if certain stores that are farther away got it first. Like for some reason, it seemed like the farther away that you went, the more likely you were to find something, which is weird. But anyway, this was a rare time that, and to be fair, back in the day, I wasn't like hunting as much as I was when I was a reviewer, but this was a rare time that very early on I just found all the Lost Galaxy stuff at my local Target. It was just so exciting and nostalgic, and the figures were some of the first things I picked up, and I always really liked the voices on them. They do use the in-space voices, which I think makes it even more fun and niche. Having these Lost Galaxy figures with the space voices, but I thought that was a fun idea. I wish more of them would have done that, where you had the actual voices, but the fact that they had the voices and that it was in space and kind of maybe gave you a, hey, what if the in-space cast stayed on? So there's just a lot of things that were charming about those for me, and they always have a personal soft spot. Number 8 is the 8-inch classic figures. Now these started with the original MMPR 8-inch figures, you know, the too hot to handle. I've always liked those too, kind of similar to the bike figures. They're not the most accurate, but they have a nostalgic retro feel to them. I actually never got the original ones till later in life when I got them on eBay, but I did have some of the Karate Chop ones, you know, ones that came with the mecha, like Silver Space, stuff like that. I never actually saw the Zeo ones from what I recall, and I'd love to get those, but I've always had a soft spot for them, even more as I've gotten older, as I've gotten to appreciate collecting things from older PR stuff, not for the show accuracy, but for the retro, you know, collectible quality of it. Number 7 is the 5-inch Legacy figures from Bandai. Now, I believe we just did MMPR and the movie figures, but this is primarily directed at the movie figures. I thought these were very solid throwback figures that weren't too muscly, that looked pretty good. I liked the throwback to the original packaging of those 8-inch ones we just talked about, but in particular, I loved finally getting movie figures. And I think those still hold up as great looking movie figures of those sculpts. Always loved those suits, and I always wanted figures of them because we never got them. Back in the day, the movie figures, well, the closest movie figures we got actually were the McDonald's toys. Those were the closest ones to looking like the actual movie. For us, for the main line, all they did was include metallic versions of the figures. So I was so happy to finally get them, and I think they're good figures that still hold up. After that is the 4-inch Power Rangers line of figures, primarily stuff like Samurai and Megaforce. I think that the mmpr 2010 remastered ones had too much of a weird quality where they had big hands and stuff, but I'm not the biggest 4-inch guy. But I mean, I prefer a 5-inch, 6-inch figure for my collection. You know, even back in the day when I collected more Star Wars stuff, I wasn't a big a fan of the 3.7 scale or whatever. I was so happy when Black Series happened. But these I think were pretty good, I have to say, especially like the Megaforce ones. You know, I had a display on my shelves back when I was at my parents' house that I really liked, and they just looked really good. They had a very solid build, good amount of details. I also loved ones like the Mega Mode ones from Samurai. You know, even though I didn't care for 4-inch figures as much, I think these were very solid figures, and I wouldn't have been mad if we had continued with this, if it continued with the general quality they had. After that is the Mystic Legend figures primarily, but overall the Mystic Force figure line. Like the Mystic Legends in particular were one of the ones I was most excited for because that was when I really started to like Mystic Force. I loved Dark Wish. I wanted those figures. I think they still hold up as some of the best looking 5-inch figures because of the armor. You don't have as much of the muscly stuff going on. And most of all, they had those swappable heads, which was just so cool. It wasn't like flip heads, but the fact that you had swappable civilian heads was just so cool. But I also liked the rest of the Mystic Force line. They were muscly, but I think the core 5-inch figures were pretty cool. I liked the US exclusive shields they got, and the Korag figure was fantastic. Next up is the Action Hero line, which is what took over from Super Mega Force until basically the end of Bandai. These were kind of a good midway point between not being overly muscly but still having some muscles, and I think overall still being pretty solid little figures. You know, I think the Super Mega Force ones were overall pretty good. I loved getting the variety of Legend Rangers for that. I think the Ninja Steel ones were pretty solid, but I think the highlight for me was the Dino Charge ones. I think those looked the best, and I loved being able to collect all the different modes for those. I think that that was an underrated, you know, final set of Bandai figures we got, and if we had continued with Bandai, I wouldn't have minded if that was the default mold. Coming in at number 3 is RPM. That followed up when we started to have more accurate molds with Jungle Fury, and I think this was probably their second best basic figure mold in terms of not being muscly, being more accurate to the show, having good details. They were very well accessorized. I really liked them a lot. My only real drawback with these is I just preferred the mold to Jungle Fury a little bit more, and these were definitely a little bit more loose. Like, none of the main first wave Jungle Fury figures I had were ever loose, but I always had a lot of loose RPM figures. Runner-up, probably controversially, is the Lightning Collection. I know there's a lot of drama around the Lightning Collection, especially as we wind it down, a lot of QC problems, a lot of understandable criticisms, especially in that last era, but we have to admit there was also a lot of non-problems that were whined about. But even setting all that aside, I'm glad for the positive things we got in it. You know, in the early days when people were complaining about little non-problems, there was a lot of really good solid figures, a lot of figures for things that I never thought we would see so early. You know, we finally got a full set of Psycho Rangers, we got the A Squad, the Omega Rangers, the Turtle Rangers. It wasn't perfect, and you know, I know a lot of people are upset with this line because they're never going to get to complete it. It would be great to be able to complete a line like this, but I kind of knew there was a chance I'd never get to complete it, and for me it's like, my collection was considered complete with all the main teams with the basic figures from MMPR through present, which were all varying differences. So I was kind of okay with just getting a spotty bunch of figures, but there were definitely some low lows, but there was a lot of standout figures that I'm really happy we got with these accurate molds, and when they shined, they really shined. For me though, number 1, in part due to nostalgia, is the Jungle Fury figures. The most exciting for me, Geki Ranger being my first Sentai, the first post-Sentai PR hunt was so exciting, but made all that more exciting when the mysterious first image of the Elephant Ranger appeared on eBay. So exciting, because you know, the thing about when you get into Sentai is there's a lot less surprises on the PR end, but this was a complete surprise I didn't expect, and so the Spirit Rangers added an extra layer of excitement to that wave of getting something new, not to mention I love the designs, but setting all that aside, this was a fantastic mold that was more accurate to the show, not so muscly, great articulation, no loose joints. You also had fantastic Rio and Melee figures, or Jared and Camille. One of my all-time favorite lines. I think they still hold up. And I think that quality also moved over to some very solid first Super Legends figures as well. But anyways, guys, that's it for this one. Let me know your favorite basic figures in the comments as always. What do you hope to see from the basic figures in Playmates? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.